Good to see ya. This is Kim Reads Urantia, and we're gonna read from the Urantia book. But first, I'm gonna read to you from "Light the Flame" by Andrew Harvey, and this is May 13th, and I had a hard time with this one. This is by Uftad. Okay, that sounds like Norwegian, like Ufta, right, or something. No, this guy was um, I couldn't figure out who this guy was for a little while, but I figured it out. He has a different name, and he was a Sufi mystic in Turkey in the 1500s, I think. Yeah, and he did a lot of stuff then at that time, and wrote stuff. Okay. May he grant us the grace of his beauty. Okay. May the field of the heart be opened wide. May we see reality's light. May we taste the wine of his fervent love, granting us the grace of his beauty. Okay, well, that's lovely. What's strikes me on this one probably most is the first line, may the field of the heart be opened wide. So, when you think about your heart opening, you think usually, I think an open heart is just open a little bit or something. You know what I mean? Because, you don't want your heart to be broken into pieces. So you think an open heart is just kind of open, like when you draw a heart, this little thing here, right here, it opens a little bit like that. Okay, but this is like the field of the heart. So your heart isn't just like my little organ that's kind of going like this here, closed to just open like that. It's really big. It's a field where the light shines, the field, and may the light, reality's light. We have to see reality's light there, and I get the idea of this huge open field that welcomes all kinds of things to grow there and people to come and dance there. That's welcoming, it's open, and it's big and fertile. So, okay, there's that. That was wonderful. Let's keep going here. Let's read paper 4, part 2. God and nature. Okay, so this is about God's relation to the universe. We've got God and nature here. Nature is in a limited sense the physical habit of God. That's interesting. It's not a habitat. Normally we think about nature as a habitat, but it's a habit. So that means, patterns. So nature is patterns of God's habits. God's habit is to go in a cycle and to have things grow and then get old and then die and then fertilize the next cycle. This is the habits of God. The conduct or action of God is qualified and provisionally modified by the experimental plans and the evolutionary patterns of a local universe, a constellation, a system, or a planet. Okay, so the conduct or action of God is modified Not that he can't do anything he wants, but, you know, within context, the context of the constellation or the system or the planet, right? God acts in accordance with a well-defined, unchanging, immutable law throughout the wide-spreading master universe, but he modifies the patterns of his action so as to contribute to the coordinate and balanced conduct of each universe, constellation, system, planet, and personality in accordance with the local objects, aims, and plans of the finite projects of evolutionary unfolding. Okay, so God is always free to mess things up if God wants to, but God doesn't like to do that. He likes to, his habit is to come and present himself, God's self, in accordance with whatever's going on within the context of each framework that he is in. So that's how God will present God's self or Zah's self to us in accordance with whatever context we're willing to accept or engage with. That makes total sense to me. Therefore, nature, as mortal man understands it, presents the underlying foundation and fundamental background of a changeless deity and his immutable laws, modified by, fluctuating because of, and experiencing upheavals through the working of the local plans, purposes, patterns, and conditions which have been inaugurated and are being carried out by the local universe, constellation system, and planetary forces and personalities. For example, as God's laws have been ordained in Nebadon, they are modified by the plans established by the Creator Son and Creative Spirit of this local universe. And in addition to all this, the operation of these laws has been further influenced by the errors, defaults, and insurrections of certain beings resident upon your planet and belonging to your immediate planetary system of Satania. So it's kind of like, okay, so when the father goes to visit the houses of his sons, like our local universe here, he's going to present himself as respectful and accommodating the laws of the sun's house, of the sun's universe. That's so natural. That's really so considerate and you know, gracious that God would do that instead of bursting in and saying, well, now I'm here, we're going to do things my way. But God doesn't do that. And likewise here, following suit here, when Jesus comes to our world, he came to do things our way, to be accommodating to our customs, our ways of seeing things. But what he couldn't do was subjugate the primary laws of the Father, like the primacy of the Father in heaven, to these local distortions of what religion was to them. Because they were, in a way, they were putting religion ahead of God. And Jesus couldn't do that. That's why they had to kill him. But in all secular things, or in all things, just, you know, he went out of his way to not try to influence these people, the people there. So like the angels, they don't try to influence us. Well, you know, they give us, you know, They show us a better way to do things. They can draw attention to over here, but it's all within the context that we're able to engage with. Because if they would just come and say, okay, and I think that's what a lot of people want. They want it to come and like blow your mind and everybody go like down and fall down like zombies, but that's not uplifting to us. And what they want to do, they don't want to put us down under their thumb and make everything under their rule. They want to bring us up to their level. So that means they have to respect us, which is amazing to me. But that's what they do. So that's what God does. Okay. Nature is a time-space resultant of two cosmic factors. First, the immutability, perfection, and rectitude of paradise deity. And second, the experimental plans, executive blunders, insurrectionary errors, incompleteness of development, and imperfection of wisdom of the extra paradise creatures, from the highest to the lowest. Nature, therefore, carries a uniform, unchanging, majestic, and marvelous thread of perfection from the circle of eternity. But each universe, on each planet, and in each individual life, this nature is modified, qualified, and perchance marred by the acts, the mistakes, and the disloyalties of the creatures of the evolutionary systems and universes. And therefore must nature ever be of a changing mood, whimsical withal, though stable underneath, and varied in accordance with the operating procedures of a local universe. Yep. Nature ever be of a changing mood, whimsical. Nature is whimsical. I love that. Yeah. Nature is whimsical when you're trying to fly a kite on the wind. Just you get the kite up in the air and then the wind goes wrong, right? Or when you're trying to sail a boat on the ocean, or when you're trying to have a picnic. Nature is whimsical. Yep. All right. Nature is the perfection of paradise divided by the incompletion, evil, and sin of the unfinished universes, which we live in an unfinished universe. It's still being worked on. And it takes so long. Oh my gosh. This quotient, right, is thus expressive of both the perfect and the partial, of both the eternal and the temporal. Continuing evolution modifies nature by augmenting the content of paradise perfection and by diminishing the content of the evil, error, and disharmony of relative reality. Okay, so it's paradise, it's perfection of that thread divided by all of the, so even though when we're humans are making this awful mistake of mowing down the rainforest or whatever it is, the human is part of nature too, doing that. And I guess we can't forget that. We tend, to see ourselves as a part and above nature, but the truth is that we're part of nature. The messed up things that we do, for whatever reasons. That's part of nature too. So, yeah, that's part of nature too. So nature is kind of good divided by the perfection that's present divided by the evil or the sin that's present. It's all that's expressive of kind of where we're at as a developed society. So I think this quotient goes up and down, fluctuates. I think it's probably pretty low right now. I don't know. Okay, leave that. God is not personally present in nature or in any of the forces of nature. Okay, well, all of you Wiccans and nature worshippers. Okay, for the phenomenon of nature is the superimposition of the imperfections of progressive evolution, and sometimes the consequences of insurrectionary rebellion, all included in nature, upon those things superimposed upon the paradise foundations of God's universal law. As it appears on such a world as Urantia, nature can never be the adequate expression, the true representation, the faithful portrayal of an all-wise and infinite God, because it includes these mistakes. So this disharmony present in our own nature, right? So I think that could be a cardinal mistake of the nature worshipers, that you don't end up worshiping your own the imperfectness of your own nature. I think, you know what, I dabbled in that stuff, in paganism, for a brief time back in the 90s, or late 90s. And I think that's kind of what I've found, is that what I felt is that people are trying to put in motion forces that they don't really understand, or they're playing with stuff that's too big for them. And that's the way I felt. But if we worship nature, it's not perfect. It's beautiful, and it's not perfect, right? Okay. Nature on your world is a qualification of the laws of perfection by the evolutionary plans of the local universe. What a travesty to worship nature because it is in a limited qualified sense pervaded by God. Just like it's pervaded by God, by God's energy or something. Yeah. Because it is a phase of the universal, and therefore divine power. What a travesty to worship nature because it is in a limited qualified sense pervaded by God, because it is a phase of the universal and therefore divine power. It's a phase of divine power. And of course, when we're talking about nature, we're usually thinking about physical things. And I love, physical bodies, my cats, my birds and trees, and all this is wonderful, but it's all physical, so that means it's all temporary. Even the planet that we live on here will continue to exist. It's wild to think, I'll be around even when the sun has swallowed up this little thing called Urantia. If I play my cards right. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So this is a little thing, this little world. Nature also is a manifestation of the unfinished, the incomplete, the imperfect outworkings of the development, growth, and progress of a universe experiment in cosmic evolution. So I think that nature provides the milieu for us to live in, to gain, to practice on, to gain the understanding we need as potentially divine beings to graduate through the levels toward divinity. So in that, it's here for us. It's here for us, but that doesn't give us a reason to abuse it. We have to respect it. But that's a milieu for us to grow against, okay? But I think that has been abused and squandered. It's a resource for us, okay? But we're not here for it. So we're not here. So there's something lost in this idea that we're like, the birds and the bees and the animals, and we're just in this. And that's true to an extent, but I think ultimately the plan has to include a way to graduate through this milieu. I think that's kind of it. Okay. But I think the way we're given this here to learn how to be stewards of these resources and how to use these resources the most effectively to create. We're not just supposed to subject ourselves to the wildness of nature. That's not it. See? Yeah. The ultimate goal is for us to graduate through these levels of development and to use nature as a resource for that growth. Okay, a little more here. The apparent defects of the natural world are not indicative of any such corresponding defects in the character of God. I'm there. Rather, are such observed imperfections merely the inevitable stop moments in the exhibition of the ever-moving reel of infinity picturization. Okay, such observed imperfections. Okay, so this is the stop, like a frame of reference here. So we have to remember when we made a mistake in order to go forward, kind of thing. It is these very defect interruptions of perfection continuity which make it possible for the finite mind of material man to catch a fleeting glimpse of divine reality in time and space. Because if we didn't have defects or problems, then we wouldn't be able to yearn, we wouldn't know that it was perfect. So we have to have imperfections to know perfection. Okay, so what would it be like without bloodthirsty capitalism? Or modify, would it be without, what could we, yeah. What if we didn't, need like, yeah, I don't know. Right. I'm coming up. I don't have an example right now. But you see what I mean? So, okay. So if we didn't, okay, like pesticides. Okay. So we screwed up the earth with pesticides. Okay. What if we never did that? Or what if we didn't need pesticides? Or something like that. Or we'd waited and not developed combustion engines, because before we had combustion engines, we had electric cars. We had electric engines that we could have just used. They weren't as powerful, they didn't go as fast. But what if we just like said, well, we're going to work on these electric engines here, and we're not gonna, what if we'd done that and just forestalled this whole combustion engine thing? Then society would have grown a lot slower. Technology would have grown slower. We'd have less energy, but it would have been more uniform, consistent, and more peaceful, and less turmoil, and probably longer lasting. Yeah. Okay. So that kind of thing. Or what if the Native Americans had developed better defenses before the Europeans came? I don't know, things like that. Okay. The material manifestations of divinity appeared defective to the evolutionary mind of man only because mortal man persists in viewing the phenomena of nature through natural eyes. Human vision, unaided by Urantia Ppr or by revelation, is compensatory substitute on the worlds of time. Okay, let me look at that again. Okay, the material manifestations of divinity appear defective to the evolutionary mind of man only because mortal man persists in viewing the phenomena of nature through natural eyes, through human vision that's unaided by Urantia Ppr or by revelation. It's compensatory substitute on the worlds of time. Revelation is the compensatory substitute. Yeah, because we can't see apart from our own physical nature, our own physical needs, which is what all this technology has grown to serve: our physical needs, not our spiritual needs. So, and nature is marred. Her beautiful face is scarred. Her features are seared by the rebellion, the misconduct, the misthinking of the myriads of creatures who are a part of nature, but who have contributed to her disfigurement in time. No, nature is not God. Nature is not an object of worship. Okay? Okay? I don't worship nature. I appreciate nature. I do seek to conserve nature. Okay? But it's not perfect. My own nature is not perfect. I think that's where it comes down to because of that. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for joining me. Love you. Bye.